I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, honestly. I thought I knew my wife, Lisa. We'd been married for about 7 years, and honestly, things had been pretty good, or so I convinced myself. She's always been a little prickly, quick to throw attitude when things didn't go her way, but I figured that was just her personality. She's a fiery one. Still, I'd never suspected she was capable of cheating, not like this. It all started a couple of weeks ago when I noticed some strange things. She was more secretive about her phone, always making sure I didn't see the screen. When I asked her about it, she'd roll her eyes and say I was being paranoid, that she was just talking to her friends or whatever. But I could tell she was hiding something. She'd leave her phone on the nightstand when she went to the bathroom, and I caught her deleting messages a couple of times. Little things at first. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept quiet. Then I noticed her behavior at the house was changing. She was more dismissive, snapping at me over small stuff, sometimes even ignoring me completely. It was like she was just waiting for me to mess up so she could start her little game. I brushed it off, told myself maybe she was stressed with work or just tired. But deep down, I knew something was off. It was the way she avoided me, the way she'd come home late or sometimes not come home at all, claiming she was out with her friends. But I had my suspicions. One night I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, just minding my own business when I saw a message pop up on her iPad. It was from a number I didn't recognize, not her usual circle of friends. The message just said, "Can't wait to see you tonight, I'll be waiting." It didn't have a name attached, but I knew instantly that it wasn't for her boss or some harmless coworker. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Something was definitely happening. I decided to do a little digging. I checked her emails, her social media, even her texts on her phone. Nothing concrete at first, but then I remembered she'd mentioned her friend, Emily from work. I looked up Emily's number, and sure enough, there were a dozen messages between Lisa and Emily's number, dirty, flirtatious stuff. They were talking about meeting up, about their plans for the weekend, about how Lisa couldn't stop thinking about the guy she was seeing. It hit me like a ton of bricks. The next day, I went to her workplace, hoping to find some clarity. I didn't plan to confront her then, just to see if she was sneaking around. I saw her at her desk, laughing at something on her phone, and I watched her for a moment. She looked so carefree, so unaware of how much I'd already figured out. I also noticed her phone on her desk, and I discreetly took a picture of it. When I got home, I looked through the messages she'd forgotten to delete. That was the moment I saw it all, the flirtation, the plans for meetups, the secrecy. It was right there in black and white. Honestly, part of me wanted to scream, part of me wanted to cry, and most of me just felt hollow. I never imagined I'd be betrayed like this, especially not by Lisa. It was so unexpected, so raw. For days after that, I just sat in silence, replaying everything in my mind. The pieces didn't fit anymore. She'd lied, she'd betrayed me, and I didn't even see it coming. It felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, and I just couldn't process what I'd found. I thought I knew her, but apparently I was living with a stranger. After I gathered all the evidence, I knew I couldn't just sit on it. I had to confront her. But I made a mistake early on. I let her think everything was fine, that I didn't know the truth. I wanted to see how far she'd go, how deep the lies ran before I exploded. That night she came home late again, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, her eyes a little too bright. I waited until she was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. I finally decided to call her out. "Lisa," I said calmly, but with a cold edge I didn't even realize I had. She turned around, giving me that look, annoyed, dismissive, like I was bothering her. "Who the hell is this Emily girl? Why are you messaging her about meeting up? Don't deny it, I saw the texts." She blinked, her face twisting into a smug smile. "What are you talking about? You're crazy. You're just jealous because I'm talking to someone who actually listens to me." "Don't bullshit me," I shot back. "I saw everything. The messages, the plans, your little secret meetings. How long has this been going on?" She scoffed, then rolled her eyes. "You're reading into things as usual. Emily's just a friend. You're overreacting. You always do. Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of spying on my stuff, we wouldn't be in this mess." I could feel my blood boiling. I wasn't just angry, I was furious. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she pretend I was the one overreacting when she'd been sneaking around behind my back? I told her I knew the truth, and she just smirked. "You think you're so clever," she said, leaning in slightly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But you don't know anything. Maybe I need someone who actually cares about me. Maybe I don't need your boring ass anymore." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a fling, not just some meaningless affair. She was so dismissive, so indifferent, that I knew she had already made her choice. The realization hit me hard. My wife, my partner, the woman I had trusted, was actively cheating, lying, and acting like I was the problem. All the while, she had her little side affair with her league commissioner, Mark, who's been managing her fantasy football league for years. I found out that night that they'd been screwing around for months, right under my nose, using the league as their cover. I also learned that Mark, the commissioner, was not some secretive outsider. Turns out, he was a guy I'd seen around at those league draft parties, always friendly, always joking, but never suspecting he'd be the one Lisa was screwing. It's funny how the people you think are harmless can turn out to be the worst. The betrayal was worse than I thought. Not just because she cheated, but because she lied so effortlessly, as if I was just there to be her fool. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, completely stunned, trying to process what I had just learned. I wanted to yell, to cry, to shake her, but I just stood there silent, staring at her as her words faded into the background. In the days that followed, everything felt numb. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, laughing with Mark, the trust I had shattered. The worst part was knowing she wanted to keep lying, keep the charade going. She kept telling me I didn't understand, that I was overreacting, that it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything. But I knew better now. It meant everything. I started to realize I couldn't go on like this, pretending everything was fine. I had to decide whether to forgive her, to try to work through this, or end it. But honestly, I knew deep down I couldn't stay with her, not after what she'd done. The betrayal ran too deep, and her attitude about it made it clear she didn't even care about how much she hurt me. She was a bitch about it, dismissive and cold. It was over. I just didn't want to admit it yet. After that confrontation, everything started to unravel even faster. I couldn't get her out of my head, but at the same time I knew I had to do something. I spent hours trying to process what I just learned, how she could lie so easily, how she could dismiss my feelings like they didn't matter. It was like I was living with a stranger, one that I'd somehow missed noticing all these years. And Mark, the league commissioner, I kept thinking about how close they'd gotten, how easy it was for her to betray me with someone I once considered a friend. I decided I needed to see the extent of her lies. I started digging deeper, looking through her phone, her email, her social media. I wanted to know if she kept any other secrets from me, or if Mark was just the tip of the iceberg. What I found was worse than I expected. There were messages from other guys too, flirtatious and suggestive, some saying they wanted to meet up, others just talking trash. She was sneaky, but she wasn't careful enough. I realized she'd been lying to my face for months, maybe even longer. One night, I finally found something that made my stomach turn. An email from Mark, sent just 2 days before I found out, titled "Our Little Secret." It was a detailed plan about how they'd meet up at his house, how she'd sneak out late, and how they'd cover their tracks. I couldn't believe it. They'd been planning it, actively hiding it from me all this time. That was the moment I knew I had to do something drastic. I didn't want to be a fool anymore, so I decided to set up a trap. I knew she was still sneaking around, probably planning her next rendezvous, so I had to catch her in the act. I installed a hidden camera in our living room, one I could monitor remotely. I didn't tell her, I just wanted to see if she'd slip up again. I felt sick about it, but I knew I had to find out how deep this went. A few nights later, the camera caught her sneaking out when she thought I was asleep. She was wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, trying to hide her face. I watched her get into Mark's truck, her face looking guilty but also like she didn't care. It was like she was already done with me, ready to throw everything away. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. This wasn't just a fling anymore. It was something she'd been planning, hiding, and lying about for months. That night I stayed up, staring at the footage and trying to make sense of it all. I thought about how I'd been blind, how I'd trusted her for so long. I thought about the times she dismissed me, belittled me, acted like I was just an obstacle in her life. And I wondered how she could be so selfish, so cold. The woman I married, the woman I loved, had turned into someone I didn't even recognize. That's when the anger truly started to boil inside me. No more pretending, no more justifications. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with everything I'd uncovered. The next day, I sat her down. I wanted her to see I wasn't stupid, that I'd seen everything. I played her the footage, watched her reaction. She stared at the screen, silent, her face tense. Then she started lying again, telling me it was all a misunderstanding, that I was paranoid, that I was overreacting, but I didn't buy it, not anymore. I was done listening to her bullshit. I told her I knew about Mark, about the plans, about everything, that I'd had enough, that I was leaving her. Her reaction was priceless, a dismissive, bitchy smirk, like she thought she was better than me, like I was just some idiot who couldn't see what was happening. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You're overreacting. It's just sex and it's not a big deal. You're making a huge fuss over nothing." That was her way of dismissing what she'd done, like I was the one with the problem, not her. I felt so many things at once: betrayal, anger, sadness. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of her lies, tired of feeling like I was going crazy. That day I realized she'd been gaslighting me for months. She'd been saying anything to keep the lie alive, to keep me from finding out the truth. But I'd seen enough. It was over. I knew I'd have to decide what to do next. I couldn't stay with someone who treated me like I was garbage. I deserved better, but part of me still felt broken, betrayed at the deepest level. And I knew that no matter what I decided, everything had changed forever. The days that followed were the hardest I've ever experienced. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, going through the motions but not really living. Every time I thought about Lisa and Mark, I felt this burning mixture of rage and heartbreak. I couldn't believe I had been so blind, so naive. I kept replaying the moments when she lied to my face, the times she dismissed me, the little signs I ignored or rationalized away. Now I saw it all clearly. I decided I couldn't just leave her without some kind of plan. I needed to get my head straight, figure out what I was going to do with this mess. I wasn't going to let her keep gaslighting me into thinking I was overreacting. I wanted her out, but I also knew I had to do it smartly. The house was in both our names, so I had to be careful. I started exploring options, lawyers, a separation, maybe even divorce. I wasn't in a rush, but I knew I couldn't stay under the same roof with her anymore. Seeing her with Mark, knowing that she'd been lying to me all along, it broke something inside me. One night I was sitting on the couch trying to process everything when she stormed into the room, eyes flashing with anger. "What are you doing? Sitting there like a damn moron, pretending you don't know everything?" She spat. Her voice was venomous. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Just because you found a few texts, you think you've won. Well, you haven't. I don't care what you saw. It's just sex, for God's sake. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I looked at her and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was exhausted. All I felt was a deep, aching disappointment. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much she'd hurt me, but I couldn't find the strength. Instead, I told her I was done, that I was leaving, that I couldn't live with someone so selfish, so manipulative. Her face twisted into another smug smirk, the same kind she'd always had when she thought she was in control. "You're not leaving," she said coldly. "You don't have the right, you're just jealous. Maybe I'll stay with Mark, maybe I'll leave you. I don't need this shit from you." She was trying to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty or like I was overreacting, but I knew better now. I knew she didn't care about us, about our marriage. She just cared about herself, about her secret life. I finally told her I was serious. I had already contacted a lawyer and I was going to file for separation. I needed to protect myself, to get out of this toxic situation. She tried to argue, to plead, but her words felt hollow and rehearsed. Deep down, I knew she didn't want to change. She didn't care about the damage she had caused. All she wanted was to keep her secret, keep her affair going, no matter the cost. That moment, I felt this strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief because I finally took a stand, and sorrow because I realized how much I'd lost. I'd lost the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew. I'd lost the trust, the friendship, the years we built together. And for the first time in a long time, I acknowledged that I deserved better. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life feeling this betrayed, this hurt. I was hurt, but I was also proud that I finally saw through the lies and manipulations. The process of separation was ugly. Lisa fought me every step of the way. She cried, she yelled, she accused me of ruining her life. She made herself the victim as if I was the villain. But I stayed firm, sticking to my decision. I knew I couldn't stay with someone who had so little regard for me, who could cheat and lie with such ease. I kept telling myself I was doing this for me, for my sanity, for my future. I wasn't going to be another pawn in her game. Looking back, I realized this whole experience has changed me. I don't trust easily anymore. I question everything. I've learned that some people are just selfish, manipulative, and willing to betray everything for their own pleasure. I've also learned that sometimes, the only way to truly move on is to face the pain head-on and walk away. I still feel the sting of it all, but I know I'll be okay, eventually. The aftermath of everything was a whirlwind. Moving out was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but also the most necessary. I packed my things, left the house she'd shared with Mark, her new little paradise of lies, and moved into a small apartment. It felt like I was starting over from scratch, like I'd been reset in a way I never wanted. Every day, I fought this mixture of sadness and anger, trying to keep myself together. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering how I missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to her manipulations. Other times I'd feel an overwhelming sense of relief that I finally saw her true colors. I immediately cut ties with her family and most of her friends. I didn't want to hear their opinions, didn't want to get dragged into their drama. I focused on myself, working, trying to stay busy, and most importantly, healing. But it wasn't easy. The betrayal cut deep. I kept replaying the moments when she lied, the times she belittled me, the nights she was with Mark, probably thinking I'd never find out. It all added up to a bitter pill I had to swallow, and honestly I wondered if I'd ever fully recover from that shock. The trust I once had in her was shattered beyond repair. I also began to realize how much I'd been holding onto to keep our marriage afloat, things I ignored, red flags I dismissed. The red flags that I now saw clearly, her dismissive attitude, her secretive phone habits, her late nights. I kept asking myself why I stayed so long, why I didn't see it coming. But the truth is, I loved her. Or at least I wanted to believe I did. I wanted to hold on to the hope that things could somehow go back to what they were. But deep down, I knew better. Some betrayals cut too deep. They leave scars that never really heal. As the weeks went by, I started to rebuild. I took up new hobbies, went out with friends, even started dating again, just to remind myself what it felt like to be treated with respect. It was a slow process. Some days I felt strong, like I was finally getting my life back. Other days, I'd fall into moments of bitter reflection. I'd think about how Lisa had lied so effortlessly, how she'd thrown everything away for some fleeting pleasure with Mark. It made me angry, so angry I'd sometimes lash out, venting to anyone who'd listen, or just crying alone in my apartment. The thing I've come to realize is that I'm not alone in this. Plenty of people go through similar betrayals and some come out stronger. Still, it's hard not to carry that pain with you forever. I've learned not to trust blindly anymore, to pay attention to the small signs. I've also learned that some people are just selfish and no amount of love can fix that. The worst part is that I still wonder about Lisa. Does she regret what she did? Does she miss me? Or is she already on to her next game? Honestly, I don't care anymore. That chapter of my life is closed. I've started to forgive myself for sticking around longer than I should have. I've come to terms with the fact that I deserved honesty, loyalty, and respect, things she clearly didn't value. It's a hard lesson, but one I needed to learn. I won't let this define me, even though it's changed me forever. I'm still healing, still trying to figure out what's next, but I know I won't stay stuck in the past. I have a future ahead of me, one where I don't have to wonder if the person I loved was just pretending to be someone she's not. I can finally breathe easier. Looking back, I wish I could give some advice to anyone going through the same thing. Trust your gut. Don't ignore the red flags. And if you find out your partner is cheating, don't wait too long to walk away. Because the truth will come out sooner or later, and it's better to face it with your dignity intact than to keep pretending everything's fine. I've learned that the hard way, but I also know that with time, healing is possible. That's what I'm holding on to now. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've grown, though I wish it hadn't taken all this pain to get here. The betrayal from Lisa didn't just hurt, it shattered a part of me I thought was unbreakable. But in some strange way, it also forced me to confront my own strength. I never thought I'd survive something like this, but I did. I've learned that love isn't enough when respect is missing and trust is broken. I often wonder how someone can be so selfish, so willing to throw away years of marriage over a quick fling or a fleeting fantasy. But I've come to accept that some people simply aren't built for honesty or loyalty. And that's not on me, that's on her. I used to blame myself, question my worth, wonder what I could have done differently. Now I see it clearly. I was the victim of her lies and her selfish decisions. She chose to betray me, and I did nothing wrong by seeing the truth. It's been a long road, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. I think the biggest lesson I take from all this is to trust my instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't dismiss it just because you want to believe in the best about someone. I learned that the hard way. And I've also learned to value myself more. I don't need someone who manipulates, lies, or cheats to feel complete. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, things I now understand I should never settle for less. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I want to say this. Don't stay in a toxic situation out of fear or hope. Be brave enough to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Sometimes walking away is the only way to find peace. And that's okay. It's okay to admit you were hurt, to mourn what you lost, but also to look forward to what's next. You'll come out stronger even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. Today, I'm still healing. I won't lie, part of me still feels the sting of betrayal. But I know that with each passing day, I'm building a new life, one where I trust myself again, where I know my worth. Lisa's betrayal was a brutal lesson, but it was also a wake-up call. I've learned that not everyone is who they seem, and that sometimes the only way forward is to accept the pain and keep going. So I choose to move on, not because I want to forget, but because I want to learn from this. I want to be better, stronger, more cautious about who I let into my life. And I want to believe that love, real love, is built on honesty, respect, and loyalty. Maybe someday I'll find that again. Maybe I won't. Either way, I'll be okay. I have to be. Because I've learned that surviving betrayal isn't just about getting through it. It's about growing beyond it, becoming someone who knows their worth and refuses to settle for anything less.